你担心诚信，我们比你更担心。
I woke up and all our orders were gone. Because of these new tariffs from the US, every American client is telling us to pause production and delay our plans. This is a mess.
There's a video showing how bad things have gotten. It's like the sky has fallen. Orders were canceled because of the US tariffs. Warehouses are packed with unsold products, and the factory floor is basically just being cleaned now, with no real work happening. Ever since Trump raised tariffs, businesses in mainland China have been feeling the chill. Even though CCP General Secretary Xi Jinping talks tough about retaliating against Trump's tariffs, the truth is the Chinese government doesn't care about how much regular people are losing, and hitting back will only bring even harsher responses. America, as the buyer, is the one setting the rules. If the seller tries to challenge them, they'll lose badly, ending up with nothing. On April 8th, U.S. President Trump officially signed an executive order to raise tariffs on Chinese goods to 104%.
They will be going into effect at 12:01 a.m. tonight, so effectively tomorrow, yes.
That 104% rate is now in effect. China has vowed to fight to the end in this trade war, but the real tariff rate is even higher because this 104% is on top of the 20% already in place from Trump's first term. That means the average tariff on Chinese goods is now close to 125%. One man in China posted a video calling on the Chinese people and the government to stay clear-headed. With tariffs going up like this, he advised they shouldn't go head-to-head with the US. Otherwise, they'd be gambling with people's livelihoods.
这2天我实在是看不下去了。
These past couple days, I've had enough. Stop talking about fighting the US over tariffs like it's some action movie. Acting tough is a dead end. Making money is what actually matters. The US has 350 million people and takes up a third of global consumer orders. Think about that. Out of every $3 spent around the world, one comes from the US. The EU has 450 million people, but their purchasing power is nowhere close to America's. We've got 1.4 billion people in China working ourselves to the bone, but our spending power is only about 1/5 of America's. The numbers don't lie, cursing the US. For being a bully doesn't put food on the table. The US dollar is still the passport to the global market. Everyone's shouting about how we don't need the American market. Wake up. The American market is valuable. Numbers speak louder than slogans. Instead of shouting about resistance, we should be thinking about how to make money within the existing rules. When your wallet is full of US dollars, then you can talk about upgrading industries or ditching the dollar. Until then, it's all just talk. Lower your head, make money, it's not shameful. Betting ordinary people's lives on pride? That's the real stupidity.
A business owner in Tangshan, Hebei, tried to fight back using what you'd call mental victory tactics. He put up a big sign on the screen in his shop. It said, "Starting today, we will charge American customers an extra 104% service fee. If you don't understand, please contact the US Embassy." A netizen hit him with the perfect response. "Dude, do you even have any American customers?" And the boss said, "Nope." So how is that retaliation? On the evening of April 8th, US time, after announcing a 104% tariff on Chinese imports, Trump attended the National Republican Congressional Committee's President's Dinner and accused the Chinese Communist Party of manipulating currency to offset the impact of tariffs. As the US-China trade war intensifies, Beijing let the yuan fall to a historic low of 7.4 against the dollar on April 8th, something it hadn't done in 19 months. This was the lowest rate since September 2023. For a long time, investors considered 7.2 to be a soft bottom line that China would not let the currency fall below. According to the Financial Times, China's central bank set the exchange rate right at 7.2 the following Tuesday, basically signaling that they're willing to let the yuan drop further in order to cushion the blow from US tariffs. Wen Lucheng posted on Facebook that Trump has made his position very clear. If the Chinese government doesn't back down, he won't just refuse to negotiate, he'll double down. This isn't a negotiation anymore, it's an ultimatum. In reality, it's more like a declaration of economic war. Wen said that if China backs down now, it could trigger a wave of nationalism at home and seriously challenge Xi Jinping's legitimacy. So the Chinese government is probably trying to figure out how much of a hit they can take from these 100% tariffs, and whether they can use domestic consumption or third-party markets to make up for the export losses. As long as things hold up inside China, they might just keep pushing through. On April 4th, Trump announced reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world. While roughly 70 countries rushed to negotiate and avoid damage to their own people, the Chinese government chose to retaliate with a 34% tariff on U.S. goods and vowed to fight the U.S. to the end. On April 7th, Trump warned that if China doesn't roll back these retaliatory tariffs, he'd slap another 50% tariff on top of what was already announced by April 9th. That would be a record high. And China didn't back down. On April 7th, the Chinese state media People's Daily published an article titled "The Sky Won't Fall," saying that U.S. tariffs won't crush China's economy, and that China has the confidence and ability to handle external shocks. The article kept repeating, "The sky won't fall." But the stock market didn't agree. Chinese A-shares plummeted after the announcement, like the sky was really falling. Right before Trump announced the additional 50% tariffs, a WeChat public account with ties to the Chinese government called Niu Tanqing published a piece on April 8th saying China was ready to hit back with at least 6 major countermeasures. 1. Massively increasing tariffs on American soybeans, sorghum, and other agricultural goods. China views this as a response to U.S. bullying. 2. Banning American poultry imports. Due to frequent bird flu outbreaks in the U.S., some in China are urging a total ban to protect public health. 3. Suspending fentanyl cooperation. The article claimed that the U.S. has ignored China's humanitarian efforts and instead smeared and blamed China. So the foundation for cooperation on fentanyl has been badly damaged. 4. Countermeasures in service trade. This includes restricting American companies from participating in government procurement and legal consulting in China. Since the U.S. has a big surplus in service exports to China, this would directly hurt U.S. interests. 5. Banning American movies. Sources say China is considering reducing or outright banning U.S. film imports in response to the rising tariff threats. 6. Investigating intellectual property profits made by U.S. companies in China. Chinese authorities might launch investigations into the large profits American firms make off their IP in China. But the man we met earlier had something else to say.
你去东南亚卖货，那收印尼盾。
You try selling to Southeast Asia and you're getting paid in Indonesian rupiah. You sell in South America, you're getting pesos. In a blink, currency exchange rates eat up your profits. But when you sell to the US, you're getting US dollars, money you can spend anywhere in the world. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war. No matter how bad that got, the US dollar still sits on top as the king of global currencies. That's just the reality. If you walk away from the dollar system, you're basically giving up your ticket to participate in global trade. People talk about shifting to Africa or Latin America, but come on, our brothers in Africa don't even have steady electricity. How are they supposed to buy your appliances? Only the US has 300 million middle-class consumers ready to pay cash. No games, no credit delays. Even with the sanctions these past couple of years, it's still the cleanest, most straightforward market in the world. Compared to all the places where you have to bribe or beg just to do business, the US is like a commercial paradise. One thing you have to remember, capital is 10,000 times smarter than you.
这两天我实在是看不下去了。
The reality is, if you're cut off from the US, the world's main consumption engine, your products won't even have the chance to lose money just for exposure. Relying on Russia or Iran, those countries are barely staying afloat by selling off their own resources. It's easy to bash US hegemony, but hard to face reality. In the global industrial chain, whoever has the buying power is king. The U.S. holds just 5% of the world's population but drives a third of global consumption. That is absolute market dominance.
On April 8th, veteran U.S.-based journalist Wang Fei posted on X, "What's the CCP going to do now? If they drop the tariffs, what happens to their pride? And for the CCP, pride equals the authority of their rule. Lose that, and regime instability follows. But if they don't drop the tariffs, U.S.-China trade grinds to a halt, and the Chinese economy plunges into negative growth overnight. Again, regime instability. This is what you call lose your head if you go forward, lose your head if you turn back." Dong Jielin, a scholar of China's tech industrial policy and former columnist for Wall Street Journal's Chinese edition, also weighed in on X. He said, "What started as a global trade war led by the U.S. has now quickly turned into a U.S.-China trade war. According to Dong, the consequences for China could include 1. China's massive trade surplus of over $1 trillion US, no matter which countries it comes from, is mostly tied directly or indirectly to the U.S. That surplus will basically be wiped out. 2. China's current industrial overcapacity needs to be cut in half. When that bubble bursts, the impact could be just as devastating as the collapse of the real estate sector. 3. Massive job losses and serious threats to social stability. All the international frameworks China has invested in, like the Belt and Road Initiative, BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are filled with partners mostly looking to profit off China. Once the benefits disappear, so will those partners. He Bin, former deputy director at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences Public Policy Research Center, criticized the CCP strategy on social media. He said, "These are totally wrong countermeasures. It's like saying, if you dare hit your wife, I'll hit my wife." He added, "If the US is hurting itself with higher tariffs, that's its business, but we shouldn't be hurting ourselves too." Financial scholar Fu Peng put it another way. Trump's reciprocal tariffs are like a buyer gathering supplies for negotiations. If a supplier flips the table and walks out, they're just giving up the opportunity to bid, and they'll be kicked out of the supply chain. But Fu's comments appear to have been deleted. Even the European Union is stepping in with a warning. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told Beijing on April 8th that the dispute must be resolved through negotiation and warned against any further escalation. In her call with Chinese Premier Li Qiang, they discussed setting up a mechanism to monitor potential trade diversion and ensuring appropriate responses. The EU is particularly concerned that China might start dumping cheap goods originally meant for the US into the European market instead. Li Qiang defended China's retaliatory measures and called the U.S. tariffs a form of economic bullying. So, are U.S. tariffs a form of bullying? The White House's official X account emphasized that the U.S. is open to negotiate with countries willing to engage fairly, but will not back down from those who have exploited the country in the past and now seek revenge. Business professor Xie Jinping at the University of South Carolina explained that Trump isn't against international trade. Tariffs are just a tool to stop the U.S. from being taken advantage of. He said many countries understand that they've benefited disproportionately from trading with America, so now the smart move is to negotiate and lower tariffs. That way, they might profit less, but they'll still keep access to the U.S. market. This trade war, Xie said, is aimed squarely at the Chinese Communist Party, to wipe out its massive annual trade surplus with the U.S. Currently, China runs a global trade surplus of about $1 trillion, while the U.S. carries a global trade surplus of to $1.2 trillion US. The bulk of that global trade surplus ends up in China, directly or indirectly. Commentator Gu Cheng argued that Trump's tariffs aren't just about fixing the trade imbalance, they're about restoring America's industrial dominance, which the U.S. held in the World War II era, but gradually lost due to decades of appeasement policies toward China. He said that dominance was hollowed out by the CCP through unfair competition and industrial espionage. But, Gu added, even though China has grown into a manufacturing powerhouse through these unfair methods, the CCP's authoritarian system and state-led economic model are fundamentally unsustainable. Now, with U.S. tariffs pressing down, the regime is caught in a prisoner's dilemma. Trump's tariff war is more than just a trade dispute. It's an economic hot war that can shape the future of both countries. As tensions rise, the U.S. and China are headed for a hard decoupling in both the economic and tech sectors. In the end, it will come down to public opinion, national morale, and which political system proves stronger. It was, in fact, American business tycoons and tech elites who, over the past few decades, poured massive investments into China, helping the Chinese Communist Party grow stronger, only now to turn around and see it bite the very hand that fed them. Commentator Gu Cheng remarked, "The pain we're now seeing isn't caused by Trump's tariffs. It's the inevitable cost of recovery for an American economy that's been deeply infiltrated by the CCP. Stripping that influence out is painful, but necessary." China's nearly $1 trillion trade surplus in 2024 is almost entirely linked to the U.S., either directly or indirectly. Now, Trump's tariff hammer has blocked that channel. For an economy so reliant on exports, this spells economic collapse for the CCP. Gu asked, with the economy in this shape, taking on Trump's tariffs head-on, where exactly is Xi Jinping getting his courage from? Maybe it's the spirit of the Korean War revival, another battle of Chosin Reservoir in the making, but this time fought on the economic front in the 21st century. And the cannon fodder? Millions of struggling Chinese, small business, and the unemployed, soon to become the frozen corpses of Xi's new era trade war. So, how is the CCP actually trying to communicate with the US? According to a Wall Street Journal article by Ling Wei, early in Trump's second term, Beijing made multiple attempts to establish communication channels with Washington, but they got nowhere. Now, with Trump announcing a 34% tariff on Chinese goods, Beijing is reportedly in shock. The door to dialogue has slammed shut, replaced by anger and helplessness. The article notes that Xi Jinping's team, which had once swaggered in talks with the Biden administration, has lost all its confidence. Even though Trump has said he's open to reaching a deal, China's diplomatic efforts, whether through Foreign Minister Wang Yi at the United Nations or Commerce Minister Wang Weitao's letters, have all been met with silence. Xi's team has been shut out again and again by the Trump camp. Even Wall Street has stopped acting as the go-between. Chinese ambassador to the US, Xie Feng, tried to reach out to Trump advisor Elon Musk, but got nowhere. The back channels that used to work have almost entirely dried up. Wei reports that one reason for this breakdown was a preliminary phone call in late January between Wang Yi and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rubio, a longtime China hawk and one of the officials sanctioned by Beijing, was reportedly told by Wang to watch herself. A source familiar with the situation said, Wang brought that on himself. That's one reason he's now shut out from any meetings. At this point, the window for any form of dialogue between the two countries is rapidly closing. As for how this tariff war ends, we'll have to wait and see. But judging from how the CCP now appears like a headless chicken, flailing and unable to respond to Trump's aggressive tactics, and how Trump has warned that he'll terminate all discussions that take place, and Trump's warnings, the writing seems to be on the wall. The CCP is headed toward total defeat.